Somewhere I Belong, Chapter 9, Part 3. What is it, nurse? It's O positive. The ponies looked at her in shock and then back at the human, who was now unconscious. Damn it, he said in frustration. What is wrong? Luna asked. He has a rare blood type, and it's impossible to find a donor in time. Luna bit her lip and looked at the stallion. We happen to have a large supply of O positive blood, she said in a stern voice. But your highness, I am giving you a direct order, doctor. Save him, she yelled. The ponies looked at one another and gave a gulp. Luna summoned a quill and parchment and scribbled a quick message on it. The mare made it vanish in a brilliant blue flame and turned back to the doctors, who had the transfusion equipment ready. We're ready, ma'am, the doctor said as the mare was hooked up to the machine and the needle was inserted into her arm. Luna bit her lip at the discomfort. We've neutralized the poison and the wounds have pressure on them, but he won't last long without the blood, the doctor said as they rolled the two of them into surgery. Twilight and the others burst into the hospital and ran towards the front desk. Nurse, is there a human here? Twilight asked as she and her friends caught their breath. Yes, they got him and Princess Luna into surgery. The princess was injured? Twilight said as she let out a gasp. No, your friend lost a lot of blood and the princess has the same blood type, so she volunteered to be the donor, she said as she glanced at her clipboard. How bad are his injuries? Rambo asked with tears in her eyes. His right arm was clawed, he's poisoned, and his chest cavity was punctured by the manticore's tail. We've given him an antidote, and he's receiving the transfusion before he goes into surgery, she said as she looked back at the stunned group of mares. The ponies waited eagerly in the lobby, hoping for the best. Celestia herself was there with them, waiting to hear the news. The doctor came out wearing a pair of green scrubs, with a bit of blood splattered on them. How are they, doctor? Celestia asked. Princess Luna is fine, just a little woozy from the transfusion. Celestia breathed a sigh of relief. What about the human? The antidote worked, and his wounds are all but healed. We're waiting to see what happens, he said as he looked back at the princess. Princess Luna is awake if you want to see her. The ponies nodded and followed the doctor to a hospital room where the blue alicorn was sitting up with an IV attached to her arm. Celestia rushed over to her sister and wrapped her in a hug. Sister, we are fine, Luna said as she rolled her eyes. Celestia hugged her tighter as she smiled. The ponies then noticed the human in the opposite bed, hooked up to a series of monitors and machines. The mares ran over to him with worry in their eyes. I hope he will be all right. If the manticore didn't kill him, then the transfusion might, Celestia said in a low tone. What? Twilight asked. Alicorn blood is extremely unstable and holds old magic. If a normal pony were to receive any, it would cause the body extreme amounts of pain. The body can only take so much, Celestia said as she looked at her sister. What was I supposed to do? Let him die? He needed blood and I will protect my subjects, even if they aren't the same species, she said in a stern tone. Luna, there's something you're not telling us, Celestia said as her eyes focused on her sister. I saw his mind. He's confused and hurt, she said in a low tone. It reminded me of myself before I became Nightmare Moon, Luna said as she lowered her head. The ponies looked at the sleeping human in surprise. I wanted to talk to him about it, which is why I was looking for him. So he's dangerous? Twilight asked. I don't know. His nightmare was very odd and disturbing. It took me quite a bit of work before we could enter his dream. So that's what you were doing in the forest. The mares looked in surprise as they saw the humans sit up and look at them. 2 days later and I'm back here again, he said as he looked around the hospital room. The 6 friends made their way over to him and gave him a hug. Easy girl, still injured here, he breathed out. Isaac looked back at the princess with a stagnant expression on his face. I don't like when other people get inside my head, princess. We apologize for the intrusion, but it looked like you needed help, she said in a low tone. I appreciate the gesture, but he felt a wave of pain rip through his body. He grabbed his side and started to shake. The ponies quickly crowded around him. What the hell was that? He said as the pain subsided. Probably a result from the transfusion, Celestia said as she examined the human. What transfusion? He asked in confusion. You were injured by the manticore and needed blood. Isaac noticed the dark alicorn was averting her eyes. You? Yes, we're sorry, she said as she lowered her head. Why would you say you're sorry? You saved my ass back there, he said with a smile. The pain you just felt is our blood mixing with yours. Your blood is O positive, right? Correct. Then I don't see the issue, he said in confusion. Alicorn blood is unstable, Luna said in a low tone. To ponies. Humans are annoyingly hard to get rid of, he said with a weak smile. The group was interrupted by the nurse opening the door and poking her head in. Sorry to disturb you, Your Majesty. I need to examine his injuries, Nurse Redheart said as she walked over to the human. Isaac removed his shirt to reveal a massive scar from the manticore's tail. Dude, that looks awesome, Rainbow said as she looked at his chest and tried to hide her bright blush. Cool, Isaac said as the nurse looked at his wounds and smiled. The poison is neutralized and your injury itself is almost healed. We just want to keep you under observation for the night to make sure there aren't any side effects. You mean from the transfusion? The mayor nodded. Fine by me, he said as he shifted his gaze to the two alicorns. This may seem a bit off topic, but how goes the search for sending me home? The two sisters hung their heads in defeat. We're sorry, Isaac. My sister and I searched every inch of the archives, but found nothing about transdimensional spells. Isaac let out a sigh and looked back at the princesses. Maybe we missed something, or... It's fine, princess. You two have a country to run, and you can't spend all of your time on me, he said with a warm smile. I was actually going to ask if it were possible for me to stay here. The mayors looked at him in surprise. Celestia raised an eyebrow and looked at her sister, who had the same look of confusion on her face. We would be honored to have you stay, she said with a warm smile. Thank you, Your Highness. I'm grateful, he said with a smile. It's no trouble. I'm sorry, Luna, but I must get back to the castle, she said as she walked out the door. The mayors smiled and crowded around the human, with looks of confusion and joy on their faces. So you're going to stay? Rainbow asked. Looks like you guys are stuck with me, he said with a chuckle. So, what did you guys do today? Dashi told us you lasted 5 minutes in bed, and she was cut off as Twilight's horn flared and changed Pinky's mouth into a closed zipper. Isaac felt his face flare up at the memories. The mayors looked at him with an uneasy look in their eyes. Really now, he said as he facepalmed. Is it true? Twilight asked. Is what true? That you lasted 5 minutes. I know what you're thinking. He must suck at sex. Keep in mind, I was very drunk, and I was going through a bit of a dry spell, so I was a little out of practice, he said with a sigh, as the mayors looked at him in confusion. What are you talking about? Rainbow asked. That's probably the shortest I've ever gone. The mayors looked at him in surprise. You mean you've gone over 8 minutes? She said in surprise. Yeah, I can usually go for at least 13 minutes at a time, he said as he raised an eyebrow. Why? The healthy stallion can only go for 2.5 minutes before reaching their climax, Luna interjected. Seriously? He said as he looked at the shocked mares. Unfortunately, yes. Some of the stallions I've been with have climaxed before I've even begun to enjoy myself, Rarity added. The mares looked at her in shock as Isaac raised an eyebrow. Even ladies have needs every now and then, she said as she blushed. The group was cut off as the nurse opened the door and walked inside carrying a clipboard. Okay, every pony, these two need their rest. You can visit them tomorrow. The mayors nodded and began to leave after each gave Isaac a hug. Rainbow hanged back for a moment and drew the curtain across so Luna couldn't see. Rainbow sat on the human's bed with an uneasy look in her eye. Listen, I wanted to thank you for, last night, she said with a smile. Dash, I was very drunk. Don't get me wrong, I like you and all, but I still need to think about how this relationship will... Relationship? Who said anything about a relationship? She said in confusion. I figured since we had sex that you... The mayor burst out into a small giggle fit. Look, pal, I know a one-night stand when I see one, and I'm totally cool with that, she said with a smile. Huh? Yeah, I'm not into that whole mushy-gushy couple stuff anyway. I was wondering if you would, I don't know, want to do it again, she asked with a blushing smile. Let me get this straight. You don't want to be in a relationship, but you still want to have sex, he said as he scratched his head. Yep. Isaac's mind was going crazy. He let out a gulp and weighed his options. He was cut off as the mare pressed her lips against his and moved her tongue inside his mouth. Isaac let out a small moan of pleasure as the taste of raspberries filled his mouth. Rainbow broke the kiss and smiled back at him. I'll take that as a yes, she said as she zoomed out the door. The force from the mare managed to knock the curtain back into place. Isaac looked over at the blue princess who had already fallen asleep. He let out a sigh and turned off the light that was on his nightstand. Isaac let out a sigh and drifted off to sleep.